welcome everyone to today's session. My name is Tara Titwell. I'm chair of the African American Community Foundation, affiliate of FFTC. Today, we're going to be talking about communicating for impact and storytelling. And really also about how to find some of the grant makers that can fund not just your story, but your impact, and why these two things are very critical. But just about for those, please feel free to enjoy this, our brief overview about AACF. AA supports organizations whose mission is to address social disparities explicitly in the African American community and serve as a center for African American philanthropic development. With that, the African American Community Foundation was founded back in 1993 as a special initiative of FFTC to promote economic self-reliance, equal opportunity, structured philanthropy, and also leadership skills and cultural awareness. It was funded by more than 25 leaders here in Charlotte, including Mayor Vi Lyles, and also Gail Crawford, and some other folks who have been pillars of the community in Bank of America, Knight Foundation, and Duke Energy. With that, created two endowments by two African American females, the Elizabeth Randolph African American Community Endowment, which initially focused on philanthropy and supporting nonprofits that address African American concerns, and also the Thea Jones Henderson, which is focused on health and some of the social determinants of health. Since then, we have awarded more than $500,000 in grants, mostly seed grants, to help with funding, supporting innovative ideas that will look to grow and foster into more strong organizations. We provide grant writing workshops such as this, and also programs to educate potential donors. Within our funding priorities are public education support, health, and economic development. These look like activities supporting K-12, out of school, social determinants of health, diseases that affect African American communities, business development, and also entrepreneurship. So today we're going to talk about strategic communications and how all this plays into your, not just your grant making, your grant writing and getting access to grant makers, but this is very critical. These is what we call the strategic communications plan framework, is understanding the goal that you're trying to have, whether it's changing behaviors, changing mindsets, changing attitudes, identifying the people whose attitudes you're trying to change or behaviors or knowledge, and developing the messages in which how they to respond back to these kinds of demands. We're going to go through all of this, but we really want to make sure that you all understand the different areas of how this communications plan is running parallel to your fundraising plans and also grant writing plans. So within goal setting, three things to focus on is what issue is most important to your organization. Oftentimes, many organizations are doing 5 different things, and trying to communicate 5 different ways is going to address one thing. Funders like seeing and understanding simplicity. One key message, one key area, one key issue. And who is most affected by the issue? Fall in love with the problem. Do you understand the issue? Do you understand the problem? Do you understand the challenge? And ensuring that that is going to be communicated as you're identifying the goal. And what's the overall goal that you want to achieve? Now, sometimes it's a changing the knowledge, changing attitudes, also being able to find those who are willing to give funding. The thing is that there's so much noise out there. You have social media, you have news, you have so many different ways that people are being inundated with communication and information. Sometimes it's hard for them to pay attention to it. And it's really critical to have that goal, because the way that the internet is working is how these things are spread and how they're able to communicate to other audiences, and also how some of the web may be able to pick up not just your action items, but also pick up and share throughout the entire world what your story is. And I'll go with that, which is audience focus. Understanding, identifying whose knowledge, attitudes, and or behavior you're trying to change. Identifying people who can influence primary audiences. Sometimes we call this influential marketing, influential communications. these are very important people because they provide credibility, they help with consistency of your message, and also helping to support how you're able to amplify this in other different channels. But also understanding that you need to identify the barriers to your audience, fully supporting what it is you're trying to do, what it is you have done, and what is you will love to impact. In terms of messaging, we love to talk about messaging because there's so much that goes into it. Sometimes they're done in your blog, sometimes they may be done in news articles. Ensuring that your message that you're developing, making sure that there's some clarity. And that goes back to understanding your goals, understanding your communication channels, and how you want people to respond to it. Is my message clear? Consistency. How can you ensure that whatever message you're delivering, that is consistent? It is consistent across the channels, is it consistent across the segments, and that there are folks who are listening to it time and time again, like a commercial. It's time and time again, the same kind of information. It will seep into someone's psychology. Main points. Only have 3 or less points, because it's very important, again, to have focus, to be narrow. People want to hear and understand what is you're driving towards. Tone and appeal. People love to be in love with a good story, with a good message. Ensuring that the tone that you are creating is going to be something that people can fall in love with, or the person who's going to be communicating this message is also communicating with something that they can fall in love with. Credibility. This goes back to who is helping you communicate your message. It can be a news journal. It can be television news reporters. It can be a blog. It can be a industry journal. It can be someone who's helping you get your information into different streams in public need. I'll give a case in point. A few years ago, we did this article with Ed Surge, and it was really just a remarkable, just a kind of an interview. And this went from a podcast to an article to being shared across many different languages in many different countries, because it really got to the heart of what is it that people across any kind of segment is looking to hear, want to see, and is it a message of hope? And that's very critical. A message of hope. People love to hear messages of hope, and also challenge, but also that there's a will and persistence to get through this challenge. And that goes back to your public need. Communication channels. A lot of times people have been so far focused on social media, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. These are all good media channels to work with, social channels to work with, but not everyone is going to be on your YouTube, your TikTok, your Facebook. People sometimes are still reading newspapers. They may be online newspapers, but they're still reading newspapers or news articles. People are still going to libraries as a source of information. Libraries have always been the source of information since their beginning. That's what they were started for. Radio. Some folks still listen to podcasts, which is now becoming more of a big push for folks who are looking to get their message out there. Sometimes people start their own podcasts as a way of delivering the message to the masses. Television isn't going nowhere, but it's important that a lot of folks are still not watching news, but there's some other ways in which you may want to have access to some kind of televised news reporting or news coverage. Blogs. Finding ways to get your blogs. There's many blog writers out there that can help you with writing the blogs. Oftentimes, nonprofits do not have the resources to do all of these things. And there's folks who can help and support you with writing the blogs, because blogs, Medium is one channel of doing a blog or sharing the information. This thing can help with spreading the message across. Something that, in terms of your message, many grant makers are going to be looking to, what is the digital footprint of your organization? And how has the organization been able to attract resources? And a digital footprint is not just about social media. It's about across the channels that you've been a part of. Being a thought leader, which I'll talk about, and being on panels. We have now created Zoom. Zoom has now allowed for many people to be on panels. And that is an effective way of getting your message across and being able to share it with the masses. And we'll talk a little bit about how can you create your own panel or be able to be a thought leader. Thought leadership is very important. If you want someone to become a thought leader, one is helping them get on the stage, helping them become, have a bold idea that can transform, society. And that is very critical. So now, what kind of grant makers are there? A lot of times what we see in North Carolina, we'll show you in a little bit, is the grant makers are focused on a couple of things. Three main priority areas: economic development, which includes, workforce development, business development, all that is around economic development, arts, and community development. Oftentimes, organizations with focus on economic development lens is looking at how are you going to impact the economy from a talent perspective, from a business perspective, increasing the economic interaction in this local environment, in your local or regional environment. Those really can be quantifiable metrics. Sometimes it's to increase the wage for folks in the workforce. We're helping folks get jobs. We're helping folks increase their skill sets. All these things are transferable into supporting economic development. Arts. Many of you might be in arts area, and those are critically important, which is supporting arts organizations that are doing things that are enhancing the social fabric of the community, the social fabric of the community, and that's very critical. And also the community development. How are we building, and it's kind of the interaction between economic development and arts and organizational development. How are we tying these things together so that we can have a sense of shared prosperity and also increase the opportunities within the community? We want to have a resilient community, so that way when we are dealing with an economic downturn, we are able to absorb shocks. And that's what community development is all about, helping to develop a resilient community. Now I'll pause right there because I want to talk about two different funding opportunities as we talk about grant makers. Stop sharing real quick. So two funding opportunities, and actually today, I had a call yesterday with Z. Smith Reynolds, and they are really just launched today their new call for proposals around state system-wide change. And this is something which, in terms of for those organizations who are doing good work, that can enhance policy, that can enhance advocacy, or challenge, our some of our legislator or organizations that really are influencing or having some kind of strings related to policy and public policy. So with that, there's two things that the ZSR, we talked about this yesterday, which is ZSR is Z. Smith Reynolds Foundation, has been pretty much supporting a lot of the community, the advocacy of philanthropic investments towards public policy. Long time ago, there was the war on poverty was pretty much built out. The framework was built by ZSR, and that was really something which is to see that go from small scale to policy. That's pretty much important. That's a kind of the systems level change that we're talking about here. And I pull this up. For those of you who are working on state level systems change, it doesn't have to be the entire state. This is a new funding opportunity that just opened up today. And critically important is to see how what you are doing, how can what you are doing influence systems change at the state level. It can be something that's related to policy, education, economic development, workforce development, arts, community. This is critical for those organizations who are thinking about, we want to move from not just supporting, impacting just one part of the community. We want to see this being adopted by the state to some level. whether another organization or another region is able to adopt some of these policies. So with that, I'm gonna pause for some questions because I think there's some opportunities here, which will give out the entire top 100 grant makers in the North Carolina, which is who are the top grant makers in North Carolina, how much do they annually give, and how often do they provide these grant cycles? Do we have any questions? All right. This is a quick question for the audience. How many of you heard of a DUNS number? How many of you have a DUNS number? Okay, great. Your organization should have a DUNS number. That is important. Reason why is because of the fact part of the federal grants, and we'll talk about, is having access to grants.gov. Is that right, Jody?
Yes. I'm sorry. I had muted myself.
Yeah.
And Terry has shared that she knows DUNS.
Okay,
we have
great.
one person who has.
All right. I love that folks are at least paying attention to this, because grants.gov is one of the areas where there's so much, as we talk about the new stimulus bill, the CARES Act, all these different funding mechanisms that are being deployed in some of the legislation. A lot of this funding is being pushed down to support local nonprofits, for organizations that may have less than $500,000 operating budgets. This is something we haven't seen in the past, and which is why it's critically important. Other things is that there's so much funding available that the competition is not that high. It's not that high. It really is remarkable to see how much funding is being allocated to support nonprofits, because it's not just nonprofits at the local small scale, but it's the work that they do and how they're benefiting and being close to the problem. This has been a change in policy probably in the last 9 to 10 months, with the new CARES Act coming out in December of last year. We see a lot of the funding was being shifted to support organizations that were less than $500,000. And this funding mechanism, or more funding mechanisms, are being used by EDA, which is Economic Development Administration. There's also the National Endowments of Humanities and National Endowment of the Arts, where they're supporting local non-profit organizations to continue their program, because also some of these local nonprofits are big workforce development engines. They're force multipliers for workforce development, and they also employ many people in their communities. So I wanted to point this out to you for some folks who have not used this as a, this is, I call it the bread and butter to finding grants, because there's so much coming out of the legislation and out of the CARES Act and new bills and new budgets, that they have to find a way to get this money out the door by September 30th, or have earmarked by September 30th. And there is so much opportunity for you and your organization to be able to get this kind of support. And sometimes your congresswoman or congressman or senator can help actually get that, because this is something which is to ensure equity. There is a way in which all the different folks in legislation, whether it's a congresswoman or a senator, they are part of that process with helping you get some of the funding. Having a letter of support from one of those two bodies helps to get that allocation. And that's the sense of having lobbying. So I think that's something which is get in touch with the Congress, your congresswoman or senator, and having them understand your story, your message, in helping to apply for these kinds of grants. So I'm not going to go through these, 2,000 plus grants, but I wanted folks to see that this funding mechanism, that these grants.gov is available for small nonprofits as well. So not thinking about, if you don't have more than a $500,000 budget, accessing grants.gov, there's many grants out there to support small, innovative ideas to help with getting your nonprofit to scale. And I was going to stop right there. And I think we have some questions in the chat box. Janet and Terry, I would love to just ask you all two questions. How have you been able to access and get some of the federal funding from your organization, or what organization do you represent? And how have your organization been able to receive funding from the federal government?
Hi, guys.
Hey, welcome
A little
back.
bit too much sunshine there. Yeah. Good to see you guys again. So I actually haven't, for the current organization, Muggsy Bogues Family Foundation, right now. And so I was just typing in, how long do you think it's taking these days to get a DUNS number? I've also worked in higher education, and that's where I did a lot of my federal grants. So it's been a while since I actually applied for a DUNS number. So I'm curious if has the process changed at all, or how long roughly it's taking to get one?
It's not as long as it used to be. I think probably we may have been like 6 months. It's now down to about less than 90 days, and sometimes even quicker.
Yeah. Okay.
So there's a little bit of, and actually now they're actually supporting for-profit companies to actually have DUNS and qualify for some of the federal grants.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Janet, I think you.
Yes, hi, good afternoon, everyone. So we just started our organization late last year. We have not yet begun to apply for federal grants, but because my for-profit company assists individuals that are in nonprofit organization settings, we assist individuals with applying for grants. And so we write grant proposals for individuals that are looking for grants for their nonprofits. But my nonprofit, I will begin doing federal grants. In fact, I received the email about today's Zoom meeting from a very dear colleague of mine, Susan Woods, and she thought that I would benefit from this, which so far I have. And so to answer your question directly, we're still in the process of developing our federal grant funding appetite, but I believe that this would help my for-profit as well as we continue to assist individuals that are looking for grants for their nonprofits.
Yeah, and I think there's some foundations that are supporting for-profit businesses that are helping support other nonprofits. I can't put a name on it. Are any of you familiar with the Foundation Directory Online?
The foundation of what?
Foundation Directory Online.
Okay.
And I'm just, because I think we want to highlight one of the things, which is highlighting this tool. These are tools that you can use as you go through your grant making or grant writing strategy, which is, arts, culture, the themes of what you are looking to get funded, who's funding who, and who's funding what. I think probably both of you, Terry and Jan, probably know it's critical to know which organizations are being funded and who's funding them, and to what extent. Because of course, there's always habits, but sometimes there's opportunity to do that. So what we did very quickly was to isolate and say, who are some of the top foundation or grant makers in North Carolina, or who are some of the top funders who give to organizations in North Carolina? And then also, what are their RFPs? And this is something that this tool, FDO, very, it's not that expensive, but it's something that is very powerful, that we are, supporting some of our grantees with navigating or accessing it, and really getting a full list of these organizations, I've already went to the top, but I think it's more than $14 billion, right, of funding, grant funding, non-federal funding, has poured into North Carolina since 2003. And that's a lot of funding. When you think about that, that's maybe 4 or 5 economies. And I think when we look at it and say, well, what are all the philanthropic organizations that are giving funding, and to who are they giving funding, and what's the frequency? Are you both, Janet and Terry, are you both familiar with the 5% threshold for foundations funding?
The thresholds?
In terms of their ability, like their spending policy or grant making policy is normally 5% of their assets.
No, I'm not.
Mm-hmm. And that's something which is knowing which good organizations you can see. We'll just give total giving. We'll go with that. And I think we'll bypass that one too. And FFTC, of course, is at the top 3. FFTC is also, of course, the top 3 in terms of their philanthropic giving in North Carolina for things that concern economic development, community development, the arts. Samaritan's Purse, their philanthropic giving has also been significant to the Carolinas as well. Bank of America as well are just some of the top 5 philanthropic organizations that have given to support community development, arts, education, and workforce development. Are there any particular focus areas that your organizations are looking to receive or access funding from?
Topical areas?
I'm
Is
sorry,
that what you're saying?
Can you say that one more time?
Are you saying topical areas or foundations? I missed it.
Topical areas.
Yeah.
Areas.
Food insecurity.
Food insecurity.
Mm-hmm.
And Ms. Janet?
Yes, sir.
Mm-hmm. What are some of the topical areas that your organization that you're writing grants for is focusing on?
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I think I misunderstood the question. And so leadership development is a huge one for us. And so basically the individuals that we tailor our programs and services to are coming out of incarcerated circumstances. And so we are designed to provide workshops and classes that will empower them to leadership development so that they can be economic and status contributors in our communities, in our local communities.
Okay. And I hear from Community Link, housing security. Reason why I asked that question, because there's also a deadline approaching as it relates to Bank of America's economic development grant. The portal is open, and the RFP is really focused on economic mobility, and housing insecurity is one of those areas. It's focused on community needs.
Excellent.
So I would encourage you to look at the portal for those of you who are in the process of whether it's food insecurity, housing, and also I would say leadership development, but it's recidivism is an area in which.
Indeed.
I'm sorry?
Indeed, it is. It is. It's an attempt to reduce recidivism. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So the recidivism is a very hot topic here in the Carolinas. Are you based in Charlotte, or are you based in the greater Charlotte region? Janet.
Queen City.
Okay. We had some folks on here from South Carolina, so we kind of wanted to understand the needs of all the organizations that are attending in their focus areas. Community Link, are you also based in Charlotte or North Carolina? No. So with that is check out that grant funding opportunity as it relates to Bank of America. Their philanthropic strategy is focused on racial equity justice. In terms of community needs, economic mobility is open right now. Housing development, minority home ownership, pathways to stable housing, sustainable development. So you're talking about food insecurity, Terry. That's part of the sustainable development is, ensuring that folks have access to some kind of food, food that's nearby, or even supporting sustainability. Aquaponics is another hot area that is growing here in Charlotte, and that focus within that sustainable development and small business, to provide technical assistance to support small businesses, economic development that supports healthy business growth. This is open right now, and we think that for those of you who are in the middle of your grant writing season, the deadline for this particular funding opportunity ends June 15th. So that gives a little bit, maybe 2 weeks for positioning your current organization or funding needs to fall in or fit within one of these buckets. Neighborhood revitalization, preservation, stabilization. All of this is, again, targeted towards some of your current needs and funding needs. So I'm going to pause right there, and we can maybe do some deep dives. I know, Terry, we already had a conversation with you in previous workshops, but love to see how might we support some of your needs as you're looking for or looking to procure funding to support your initiatives. You're on mute, Terry.
Darn, it gets me every time. In my situation with the Muggsy Bogues Family Foundation, we're relatively new. In fact, we're just going, you said one of those grant deadlines, and I'm like, whoa, because June 16th, we're going through an audit, and there's no way I can do a grant on June 15th. So I'm really looking for and networking with agencies that support smaller, newer grassroots organizations that don't have a strong track record of grant receiving, I should say, and that are willing, I think the way I look at it is to take a chance on us, to partner with us and see what we can do, understanding, where we're coming from. We don't have a lot of data to share at this point. We don't have, the grant history. Our board is new. So, right, we don't have any of those indicators for longevity. So that's what I'm really looking for, some opportunities to get us to the next level.
And that's more so dealing with access to funding or access to doing programming?
Well, it's a little bit of both. The programming will follow the funding. We definitely do want to be growing the programming, but we're not going to be able to do that without the funds to support it.
Okay. And community link. Not sure, you're still on mute.
Sorry about that. Yeah, specifically, we have a couple of programs that, like our homelessness to housing program, that we're looking for funding for specifically. But this Bank of America grant seems like it's a good fit.
Great. So from homelessness to stable housing. Was that what I heard?
Yes.
Okay. So I think
yes.
so I think probably checking out the Bank of America's application as you're doing that. Is your organization, how long has your organization been around or existed?
We were first established in 1929 as a traveler's aid agency. But we've been working with homelessness to housing for decades. So
yeah. So you may be in the more looking at some of the different federal funding opportunities as well. Is that correct?
yes, we do. We work with HUD, and we do have a lot of federal funding.
Awesome, great. Janet, I would love to hear more about the organization that you're working with and how we can better support.
Sure. So the name of my organization is the Free and D Project of Charlotte. And we are working with the support services of the detention center in with the women population there. And right now they have started a backpack program for women that are coming out of incarcerated or all individuals that are coming out of incarcerated circumstances. We in particular have a focus on the women population. And so our desire is to give them and equip them with the social skills that they need to operate effectively in society without returning to jail because they just don't have or don't believe in themselves to have what they need here. And so they continue to come back to the same circumstances, continue to come back to the same patterns of behavior. Our goal is to transition them from their current mindset into a mindset of liberty.
Love it, love it. And I think, I hear the three main areas: recidivism, food insecurity, and also housing security. Are any of you familiar with impact bonds?
No.
They're
BONDS?
Yeah, BONDS. It's a way of which we call it pay for performance. And these are things that are growing, and we want to, like, again, the more you get your story right, the impact, the statements, many of them are focused on how do we reduce recidivism, which is where the first impact bond in New York started. How do we reduce recidivism, and what organizations are helping to reduce recidivism? And in terms of housing insecurity, I think one of the things we were talking about last time, Terry, which is how do we quantify, food insecurity? How do we quantify that to help create a social return on investment? And that goes back to what are some of the benefits of having food security, stabilized housing, things that are going to address the peripheral challenges when there is food security at the heart of it. And that's something which is very critical to help with the communication as you all are building this out for supporting, getting funding from grant makers such as the Bank of America Foundation. These are critical. And I think that's where we are. And I think we'll love to find ways in which some of the work that we're doing with our grant making, which will open up in August, helping you and your organizations, begin to help develop that case for support as we are looking at this as how are we investing in transformational, innovative projects and programs, organizations that may not have the track record, because there's some organizations, as you may know, that may not support or be able to fund or will not fund organizations that have less than a $500,000 budget, because that's just not what they do. And sometimes they want to get to the grassroots organizations that are doing more innovative work. And then part of our model is to serve, which is to help elevate these organizations as we're not just giving them funding, but we're also helping to elevate, validate, and empower and respect in that way, which these organizations can continue to grow and thrive. So we look at our awardees as being not just awardees, but also partners as a part of the FFTC family and AACF family. So we're really excited. We thank you all. If there are any questions, we'd love to figure out some ways in which we can continue to better support you in these kinds of, whether one-on-one sessions, access to information. We will be sending out a strategic plan guide template for you to think about how you put your information together as you go address these audiences. These are tools that you can have in your toolbox for your organization as you are looking to get not just funding, but support.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
Because we're getting the announcements for these programs, will we also get notification when grant opportunities open?
Oh yeah, yes. I'll leave it to Kiana.
Kiana,
Yes,
I
we
think
also-
you added me.
Yes, we did add you, and when we send out the announcement for August, we'll send that out to the same list. So you'll receive that, as well as I think other opportunities like New Generation of African American Philanthropists, NGAP, and some others.
Okay. And can I ask another question? We do not want to reinvent the wheel. In fact, we want to create and strengthen partnerships that we have with other organizations that serve the people that we also want to serve. For example, Charlotte Rescue Mission, Salvation Army, Mecklenburg County, Harvest Center of Charlotte. In your mind, is that a strength for an application, that we don't do direct service, that we work through these other organizations to do our work?
I would leave that question to Jody, our grants committee chair. Her internet was a little bit off, but what we look at is, from our previous session, which is how will this be impactful, transformational, and innovative? Because these are seed grants, which essentially is their way of testing a prototype. And also, is there a need for this kind of prototype or this new innovative idea or project that you or your organization is looking to do? So I think it's not so much about collaboration, it's just how are you collaborating that is going to make it innovative.
Okay, so not the approach, but whether the idea, the project itself is innovative.
Yeah, I mean, collaboration is great.
Yeah.
But not just in name only, is how is this going to be innovative, collaborative, problem solving. In fact, for that kind of, those kind of, call it more of community problem solving, a group of organizations working together to solve a problem.
Okay.
That is, we would say teaming up for innovation.
Love it.
I would personally like to invite you to our next board meeting.
Who's you?
Who's you?
I knew that would get your goat.
You have Kiana, you have Community Link. Yeah.
Who's you?
Who's you?
Oh, I'm sorry. The two ones that are hosting the the two
There you
that are
go.
hosting this workshop today.
Yeah. Well, we'll also love to, I think, Kiana, Jody, or myself, we love to get the word out there and of course share as much as we can about this about AACF and it being an affiliate of FFTC. So welcome the invitation. We'll see how we can make it happen between the three of us.
You can send it directly to me, Janet, at Q Austin, and I'll type my email address there just in case you don't have it.
Okay, yeah, if you can put that in the chat, I'm more than happy to do it. But I'm seeing CPCL Zoom. What is your name?
I'm sorry, this is Kiana Austin.
Okay, Miss Kiana, thank you.
Can I put in a plug for another grant opportunity?
Sure.
Sure.
I think I'm directing this to Janet. Janet, you were the one speaking about working with women coming out of the prison system.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so another hat that I wear is program officer for the Mecklenburg County ABC board. And we do
I thought you looked familiar. I still have your from the presentation you did. I said, she looks so familiar. I still have all of the information from the presentation that you did. I'm gonna definitely throw my my petition in this upcoming cycle. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I was gonna put a plug in that because it sounds like doing some prevention and education with that group would be a really great program.
You bet. Can you send me your email as well?
Yeah, but I would need yours to
Miss
send
Terry?
I was gonna say, maybe we can put it
Okay.
in the chat, so that way you all
Yeah,
can.
okay.
Small world, isn't it?
Yeah, look at that.
Indeed it is.
We love that, you know, the kind of connectivity there. Any other questions or thoughts before we begin to wrap this up?
Thank you for doing this. This is the last in the series.
Yes.
Yeah, I missed the first two, so I look forward to going back and watching the recordings. But thank you for doing this for, again, from both the organization perspective, and I also work on the grant making side. It's a great service you're offering to the nonprofits.
This is our first time doing this. We've been doing a grant writing workshop, but we wanted to kind of be, you know, more expansive.
Yeah.
And we wanted to have an opportunity to learn from previous awardees and also folks who are looking to, you know, submit some kind of application for some of our upcoming grant cycles. So this has been a learning experience for us as well. So we really are appreciative of the feedback, the information that you all have shared with us, because this is helping to inform our grant making strategy as well and our outreach strategy. So we're really thankful for you and your time. So it's been a benefit to us as well.
That's wonderful.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, that's all concludes for today's communication impact. You will receive the template guide. Some of you may or may not need it, but it's really a great template guide that we use with strategic communications. It's about 40 pages, but it gives you step-by-step worksheets, activities, things that you can do for your organization to create a succinct message across different channels, audiences, and also you know, helping with some of the public relations engagement. So really thank you all so much for your time. Thank you for coming. We look forward to seeing some robust applications in the fall. Please feel free to reach out to Kiana or myself, and we look forward to working with you all in the future.